This is part of my Read Like a Writer series. I'm in the fourth section of Chris Ware's Rusty Brown, the Joanna Cole chapter. I'm going to just page through the book, pointing out some things that I think everybody ought to notice. If you haven't read the chapter yet, pause the video and read it first. So here is the opening scene. And if you have already read the entire chapter, by the time you come back and look at the opening scene again, you will realize that this piece of the story is not being told in chronological order, right? The opening scene is, here's Joanne Cole at the school alone after the kids have gone home in the library doing her library research. This is not the first time she has done this. It's not the last time. It's one in a sort of a middle range of a series of, this is a habitual activity of hers, but this is the first time we see her doing it. And how old is she here? You can make a pretty good guess on the basis of her hairstyle, all right? In the very earliest scenes where we see her at her youngest, including in just a few scenes from now, this is the earliest stages that we see her at when she is already a teacher employed at this Catholic school. And you can tell by the hairstyle and the kind of clothing that she and her sister are wearing that that's the 1960s. So this is later than that. This is the same hairstyle that we see her in the earliest chapter, the intro chapter, which we know is 1975. So this is 1970 something here. And it's just her and her library research. She's completely absorbed in it. Looking at what shows were available for people to see 100 years ago in the place where she's at, Omaha, Nebraska, in 1911. All right, almost 100 years ago. And then George, the librarian, interrupts her and offers her a ride home, which she refuses and goes and stands at the snowy bus stop instead. And this also, we will later learn, is like a habitual activity. At this point, you know, how long has this man been offering her a ride and how long has she been refusing and standing at the bus stop instead? Long time, like more than a few years already at this point. So like the several big topics are being introduced here, right? Her relationship with the library and library research, her relationship with George, who you can sort of already see he's interested in making more out of it than she is. She is refusing an advance toward intimacy that he's making by offering her a ride. And, you know, it's not to say it's like got something underhanded going on, but she does not want to be alone with the man in his car, even though that means standing at a snowy bus stop instead. And even though she's known him for some years at this point. Okay. Part of the pleasure of reading this chapter is like figuring out what events happened in what order in Joanne's life and figuring out the logic of cause and effect in her life. But the events aren't presented in the order that they happened, to a large extent anyway. Same hairstyle, so roughly same time period, and this is just her. This is her life, what it's like. We saw a winter scene, now we're seeing a fall scene. Her working alone in her now empty classroom. Little smiley face. She takes the trouble to try to make this individual emotional connection with her students. Chris Ware, and this is one of the amazing things he does. He's got a lot of pages like this of like just representative habitual scenes. This is the texture of a life lived. Really makes you feel what it feels like to be this person, to live this life. And here we are back in the 60s, and there's her younger sister, Janine, also called Jean. This incident becomes important later because her sister lights up a cigarette in the classroom, which inappropriate. Well, there's no kids there at the moment. Anyway, a big deal is made about this later, but it wasn't her idea. And she didn't even really give her sister permission to do that. The sister just lights up, doesn't wait to ask. This scene is the first time we see the two sisters together, and you can really see the difference in their personalities, and kind of sets the tone for this entire relationship. That the little sister gets the big sister in trouble. The contrast in their hairstyles is significant also. You might not necessarily be able to parse this. So this is the 1960s, and this is a 1960s clothing style and hairstyle. And the little sister has a 1960s hairstyle too, but hers is a more in-your-face kind of Black Power afro. This is a hairstyle that like makes a political statement, whereas the other hairstyle, the big sister's hairstyle, Joanne's, she's just going along with what female fashion is at the time. But African-American hair, super curly, right? It's got these tight coils built into it naturally. To put your hair in a hairstyle like this, if you are African-American, that just doesn't come easy. You have to do things to your hair to make that work that way. Like use irons on it or chemicals, or it's not effortless to make your hair basically into a simulacrum of white European hairstyles. And the little sister's not doing that. She's like Black Power, Black Pride, full afro. Whereas the other woman is sort of complying with white woman-ish expectations. I meant to point out on the previous page, oh, no, I guess it's a subsequent page. Yes. And here, there's another incident with George. He's letting her into the school, and it's Cupcake Day. My goodness, is it Cupcake Day again already? Well, we don't know what that means, but we know enough already to be able to see that this is a regular event. Just once a year, Cupcake Day comes around. And in case you were wondering, well, what day is Cupcake Day? It's hopefully there on the board, January 24th. Every January 24th, Cupcake Day occurs. And you can see that she and George are both way older here. She's got her hat on here, but when she removes it, you can see the hairstyle. Trying to do too much at once, I guess. Ha ha, oh, that's why we love you, Joanne. So he uses the word love, but not in a romantic-y kind of way, but more in a just, we are affectionate but platonic work colleagues kind of way. What year is this? We don't know. but we know what day it is, January 24th. And here she is in another characteristic activity, playing the banjo, practicing the banjo. School is already out, but she stays there in the room where she has some privacy and she's not going to be bothering anybody. Practicing and practicing while the snow is falling down. Something worth mentioning, which you might not know if I didn't tell you, is that Chris Ware is a banjo expert. He owns a banjo and spends a fair amount of time playing and practicing the banjo himself. So this is a little piece of his own life that he has put into Joanne Cole. Hold that thought for later. And again, with the snowy bus stop, that's how she gets around on the bus. It's this 2-page spread and her so small and the snow all around. It evokes loneliness and a certain amount of, I was going to say suffering, but I've changed my mind, stoicism, right? She stands at the bus stop in the snow because that is what she does. And she is tough and she can take it. Managing the parts of her life. All right, and then the next scene, and this really is as early as it gets. We do eventually see her at younger ages, but this is like the very, very, very beginning of her professional career, when she just now got the job at the school, and she is just meeting all of the other teachers at the school, including her, the music teacher. Things worth noticing here, besides the fact that this is also the beginning of her relationship with the banjo, right? She gets the information from the music teacher where to go and get a banjo. And this is also the first day she meets George. I don't believe we met. I'm George, the new librarian. Oh, excuse me, sorry. And right here, let me put it up closer to the camera. See the little white letters saying wipe. It's onomatopoeia, and yet it doesn't necessarily make all that big a sound, the wiping action, but it's just something that you might not necessarily recognize only from the motion lines. So Ware drops that word in there too, wipe. Keep an eye on that. This is, he may not be the only person to have ever thought of it, but he's certainly a master of using this. And a lot of people have picked up the habit since Chris Ware of that you are allowed to drop that little word on the page to clarify an action that might not be clear otherwise. Wipe her hand on her butt before she shakes his hand. And the you can still see the smudge of sugar on her lips as she's talking to him. And like, it helps you feel the awkwardness of this situation, right? George is not doing anything that could or should be described as inappropriate here, but he's also clearly, I think, indicating that he has a social interest in getting to know this person. Joanne, well, nice to meet you, Joanne. Welcome to the library, where apparently all knowledge ended with the Eisenhower administration. That also helps you place this on the timeline, right? When Eisenhower is the previous president. And so at this time, either Kennedy is president or Lyndon Baines Johnson, who succeeded him when Kennedy was shot. Probably it's Johnson. We can get into the math of the years in our discussion groups later, perhaps. Anyway, the smudge on her lip and the awkwardness of George indicating his interest. You're tall, you know that? Ha 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 ha. Oh, I don't know. Oh, I know, believe me, because I'm not. Um, I I'm sure that George being shorter than average is a little bit of a handicap to him in his dating life. But I'm also quite sure that that's not the reason that Joanne didn't go for him. I don't think she's that shallow a person, you know? So, like, this is one of those interpretive questions that occurs to me. Like, why did Joanne, like, never give George a chance to be more than a work colleague, right? Because she certainly never did. And he didn't quit trying right away. We know he kept on trying for years. You're going to want to ride home, right? This is this the first time he mentions it? I don't think so. All right. And this is where it comes down, and she's gotten in trouble for her little sister smoking a cigarette in her classroom. This is Woody Brown at a relatively young age, 1960 something, I'm guessing, based on her hairstyle and also like how old he is. He's maybe 30-ish here. Not a lot more than 30 anyway. So this is like an in-between stage of Woody Brown that we didn't see in the Woody Brown section, but Joanne and he have worked at the same place for a very long time, and they're growing older together, just as she and George are. And he has some kind of authority at this meeting, which is basically just to scold her. They don't actually do anything about it, but you know, he's quite threatening. Some of our parents, many of them from very well-to-do backgrounds and high-profile positions, might be extending a certain charity to you in your position. And what your people do in your free time is no concern of mine, blah, blah, blah. Okay, that makes it clear, if it wasn't clear already, that there is a racial component to this. Your people, what else would that mean? And then this other man, if Woody is the main aggressor in this situation, this guy is to some extent Joanne's defender. He tells Woody to cool it. It will be super disappointing later to learn that this man also is covertly somewhat of a racist. Maybe I shouldn't say somewhat. I don't know. There are degrees, aren't there? Now here, where on the timeline are we? Well, much later, as you can tell by a variety of cues, the type of computer that she is using, this monitor and the what do you call it, the user interface here, this has to be the 1990s. Okay, any earlier and the screen wouldn't have looked like that. It'd just be a dark background with a green cursor, and that's all you got. It's green letters on a dark background. But this means 1990s, and any later than that, and it would have been a flatter monitor. And also you can see by her face that she's older and heavier and jowly kind of, and she's got these glasses, and she has changed her hairstyle yet again to a more African-American natural style, more like her little sisters in the previous scene. Okay. The fact of it's being January 24 or January 24 that she's writing about on the screen, it's not January 24 right now, because you look outside and you can see that no, we're not in the middle of winter at the moment. But the date itself jogs her memory, and she thinks back to a previous January 24 in her life. And you can see that that is her at a younger age, because Ware gives us the cue of she's wearing similar clothing. All right. That's not because it's realistic to think that, oh, she wore green that day and she also wore green that day. No, it's just for our benefit, the reader, to help us make the connection that this person is this person, but at a much younger age. She remembers the snow. She remembers riding on a bus. She remembers being at the station. She remembers her mom giving her the silent treatment despite her pleading, Mama, Mama, please tell me. All right. A person who has read the entire chapter, spoiler alert, last chance to turn off the tape if you didn't read the chapter yet. This is after she's gone and had her out of wedlock baby, and it's been disposed of into the adoption system. And her mom is still punishing her for the indiscretion of having become pregnant and not, dealing with her kindly. Mama, Mama, please tell me. But she doesn't. This is the trauma of Joanne's life. And this is the very first tantalizing glimpse that we get of that here, which on your first read you cannot interpret, but on your next read through you can. This is very much a book that rewards rereading. Okay. And here's the Lintz. We know the Lintz. Her timeline intersects their timeline more than once, right? She has been little Jordan Lintz's third grade teacher many years in the past, decades ago from the now of this page. And now she has, and you know this from reading the Lint chapter, she has the authority of being the head of the so-called lower school, meaning the elementary school grades. And so she's in charge of the decision-making over whether this difficult boy will be expelled or not. In the Lint chapter, I decided to flip back to that and take a look. It's on page 225. So we have seen this incident twice, once through Jordan Lint and then the second time through Joanna. In the Lint section, it's not even the same outfit. I mean, it's pretty much the same. In overall, the look of it is similar, but here she's in yellow and here she's in green. So like they can't both be exactly 100%, right? We're dealing with the fallibility of human memory here. And in the Lint chapter, cough, cough, ahem, is there anything we can do? Or like he's offering a bribe, if we donate money to the school, will you not expel our lousy troublemaking son? And then in the privacy of their home, the mother is saying, who is this cold woman anyway? She's not anybody important. Talk to somebody else. Go over her head, right? And we will see later that they did go over her head and she did agree, and probably money changed hands one way or another. It's Cupcake Day on page 284. What year is it? Early-ish. There's the sister lighting a cigarette. This just little throwaway scene, and you can pin down exactly which year this is, because it's the same year. This dude, Brett Hornslock, who will be killed in a car wreck with Jason Lint when they're both in 11th grade or their senior year, I guess. Here he is in the 3rd grade refusing the cupcake because his dad doesn't want him to eat anything that black hands have touched. So we're not taken inside Joanne's head to be given her thoughts directly, but we don't need to, you know what that feels like. And like retroactively, you might have somewhat less sympathy for Mr. Hornslock than you did before. Here's Janine/Jean with her baby, dropping him off for babysitting. You notice there's no mention of there being a dad in the picture. I don't think that I think she's a single mom. I think that that is being subtly indicated just by the fact of if there were a dad at all that she had any amount of reliance on, she would be saying that, here's why his dad can't take him. Here's why I need you, because whatever, because Clyde has to work or whatever. But there isn't anything like that. So I don't think there is any Clyde, I think that it's just her and Tommy. And when she has to do something else, she has to rope in her female family members to do it. It's just a few years difference between her and Janine. Maybe more than 5 years, but not a lot more than 5. But that's enough to make the difference between you have to be whisked off to another city to have the baby anonymously adopted versus, okay, keep the baby and raise it, So she and Janine are in the same situation, and yet they've been treated completely differently by circumstances. Her baby got ejected from the family. This baby gets to stay in the family. It's not fair, but 5 years makes a big difference in how cultural shifts have happened. Babysitting Tommy makes her remember back to a time much earlier in life when she's a little girl herself still. I'm going to say 10 years old maximum. And her little sister Janine is just a toddler. And so that their mom can work, they're both being dropped off at somebody else's house. And this woman is watching them. Who knows whether the mom, her name's Lizzie, is paying this woman or not. I have a hunch it's not money, that just an exchange of favors type thing. And that's the first time we see this little boy who's presumably her son. He's interested and curious in these girls who are on the couch there. And we'll see him again, the boy in the white shirt. And here we are. And this is the day she gets her first banjo, on a rent-to-own basis. There are some very interesting things that happen in this scene worth noticing. Like many, if not most, of the white people we encounter in this story, Mr. Meyer has at least a little bit of implicit racism going on. But he's a polite man, you know. Yeah, I don't know. We don't usually rent instruments to. He nearly said we don't usually rent instruments to Negroes, right? Using the terminology of the time. But he stops himself just in time. Worth less than $75, I mean. So he's treating her relatively politely as a customer, but there is a difference in his manner too. This little boy who's in the store at the same time was like shocked to see an African-American person in this setting. This is like so noteworthy. It is worth pointing it out to your mother who is yanking you away from there. These little details add up. It's worth taking note also of the $2 that get their very own panel here. This $2 calls to the $2 we'll see again in a later scene. And again, the shape of a life. This is what it's like. Back and forth on the bus. Housework, schoolwork, eating alone at the cafeteria, grading at your desk, saying hello to the janitors, cooking, helping your aged mother, etc. It's very interesting to see the prominence of the ashtray and the cigarette butt in this scene. This brings us back to what is the present of the first chapter again. We have seen her in this exact outfit, and this is the teacher's lounge. And there's Woody Brown smoking like a damn chimney. Nothing wrong if he smokes in his designated place. There's the person that she's on the phone to is her little sister, and she's going to be writing a letter of recommendation for her sister, evidently. And that puts her in mind again of her past. Now, and this is just a few years later than the other flashback, she's old enough, she's a teenager by now, but still a young teenager, I think. She's old enough to be taken along to help with the paid home cleaning that supports this family. So she's going on as like a junior employee of her own mother. Take a look at this house. This is her very first time on the job as a grown-up woman helping her mother to earn the money that supports the family. And this is the first place she ever does that, is that house. Does that look familiar to you? It ought to. That is the Lint mansion. That woman that opens the door and welcomes them in, that's little Jordan's mother. It's before she's dead. So this is very early on. And again, you can work out the exact year because you have the Lint timeline helping you along. So little Jordan Lint at this point is 4 years old or less, basically, because the mom's still alive. Maybe just a baby even. Anyway, the connections between the Lint family and the Cole family go way back. that scene is developed further. And that's, yes, that is definitely the lint interior. We've seen this shot a dozen times in the lint chapter. Her mom's relationship with money, her mom's relationship with religion. And here again, it's Janine, who's the wild child, and tearing pages out of a Bible or a hymnal or whatever it is. And it's Joanne who's going to be held responsible for Janine's bad behavior and intervenes in it. But it looks like George also never got married. Not because he wasn't interested in dating. We know that from the fact that he was coming on to Joanne in at least a small and gentle way. He was trying to get a date with her. So he has not succeeded with any other woman either. And by now he's given up. And his emotional life revolves around nephews and nieces, as does Joanne's. Trying to get the minister interested in her participating in the church musical. This chapel is connected with the school, right? It's a religious school, and they have religious things that they have to attend in the chapel, and that's part of it. Like it's not a church-state separation kind of situation. They're combined at a parochial school, and she would like to participate and has the skills and talent to participate, and he just kind of brushes her off. Presumably, there's a racial component to that too, right? And here, another day in the teacher's lounge. Let me point out, look, your little sister is in the newspaper. She just won an award. It's devastating for Joanne because she had no idea. This is how estranged she is from her sister, that her sister doesn't even tell her what's going on in her life. And you can see in her face how much it affects her. If that's not enough to see it in her face, she like, it stays in her mind all day. Her mind revolves around this family wound. Doesn't even call to wish Mama a happy, go out of my way to write. She's doing her chores and writing her checks to pay her bills and muttering to herself. And that muttering to herself allows Chris Ware the opportunity for her to vocalize her thoughts. You should contrast this with what we've seen in the other sections. Even though Joanne is our focal character in this chapter, we're not inside her head very much, just enough to open it up for us to see some of her memories. But Ware doesn't express her thoughts to us in words. And this is the closest he'll come, having her mutter her thoughts aloud to the air. With Jordan Lint, with Woody Brown, we're inside their heads a lot more. Rusty also. Their thoughts are an open book to us, way more than Joanne's are. Ware leaves her privacy to a much greater extent than any of his other focal characters. I am going to make the guess that it's a kind of diffidence on his part. Does a white author have the right to like claim to know what it is like to be an African American woman? She is prepping for Cupcake Day here on 301, and her mom is like scolding her for wasting money on cupcakes for rich children. And Joanne doesn't tell her Cupcake Day, it's Cupcake Day, and what Cupcake Day means to me. What business do those school kids have with cupcakes? Most of these kids, folks could buy that cupcake factory. Why do you want to go and give it to them? Mama, they're not. They've been working hard lately and I wanted to surprise them, that's all. Everybody at work knows about Cupcake Day, or at least George does, but it's not to be mentioned to her mother, you know, the significance of Cupcake Day. Mama, it isn't your money, it's mine. I make the money, remember? And I can do whatever I want with it, understand? You understand, Mama? This is a relatively rare outburst of anger. Putting the mom in her place, right? The ranking adult here is no longer you, mother, it is me. The roles have been reversed. I am the adult in charge here now. I'm the moneymaker, and it's what I say that goes. Long since, you can roughly place this in time by the hairstyle. You know, by now, she has known Mr. Meyer for 15 years, more, long time anyway. She has won Mr. Meyer's respect over the years. You're playing really well. You must practice a lot. I'll cut to the chase. He's offering her a really fine banjo, not the one she already rented to own before, but an exquisite, well-preserved, antique banjo. And the deal is she'll earn it from him by teaching banjo lessons, which he would like to offer through the store. You can work it off a lesson at a time with the company store, so to speak. It's a little joke about real economic exploitation of the underclasses. It's probably not as funny to an actual member of the working class as it is to him. Working class, I don't know. She's a teacher, she's a professional, but she's not paid as much as she should be, as we'll later see. Anyway, don't say no. Besides, look, this banjo literally has your name on it. Can you see it well enough? It's a Cole banjo. And that is, and you can Google it, that is the name of, you know, a particularly fine type of banjo made by somebody named Cole, I guess, sometime in the past. So like a super coincidence, right? Joanna Cole and Cole banjos being a thing. Except that it's not, when you remember that Chris Ware is a banjo expert. He must have had this story in mind and how he was going to move the plot forward and that it would come to this point. And that's why he decided to name his character Cole. You know, it's the authors that decide. If this happened in real life, yes, it would be a super coincidence that Joanna Cole takes up the banjo and Cole banjos is a thing. But this is not real life, this is fiction. And Chris Ware decided what to name her. And this is the reason, I'm sure of it, why he decided to name her Cole in the first place. He knew he wanted to make her a banjo player, and so he picked that name. And this is the scene where she admits to George, who's the closest thing she has to a close friend at this place. She lets George know, but still without making a huge deal out of it, that she's estranged from her sister to the extent that she has no idea how her own nephew is doing. And then we go from there to a flashback from very early in their relationship, or he's first showing her how to work the microfiche reader at the library. You can get magazines, maps, census records, birth records. That makes her ears perk up. Birth records. She sees the possibility of she could do this research into what happened to her own baby. Now, and this is the very first time. Now, cough, you're going to need to ride home, aren't you? And this is the very first time. He's hitting on her in a gentlemanly way, and she's saying no. I'm waiting alone at the bus stop, even though bad stuff can happen to a woman at a bus stop. Unpleasant stuff. It's a car full of teenagers driving by. Hey, how much? Pretending. It could be an actual error on their part, but I think not. I think it's just to insult her, pretending to think that she's a prostitute looking for business. Hey, how much? The hypersexualization of Black women in particular. And here's her interacting with the headmaster. She gets a stack of old sheet music from Mr. Meyer. Some of it by this banjo artist that she's interested in from nearly a century ago in this area. And what he doesn't realize, but it's lurking there for an unpleasant surprise for her, is that there's this minstrelsy going on. And one of these white banjo musicians has created a piece supposedly in an African-American style called Darky Town. Just lurking there. When you go in digging into history, these unpleasant things come up. Here's an interpretive question that I can offer to any other reader of this story. This woman comes in, here we are in the 1990s or possibly even the early 2000s, if this is slightly older equipment. And this young mother is trying to decide whether she should send her boy Isaiah to this religious school to end up being one of the very few African Americans that at that school. And like she's weighing the pros and cons in her mind, she knows he'll get a better education, but will it be a too unpleasant social environment for him? And she's trying to get that information out of Joanne Cole. He's got good grades. He's an academically talented student. Speaking as one woman of color to another, I worry about this school's multiculturalism or lack thereof, if you know what I mean. Yeah, I know what she means. are the white kids going to make her black son's life hell? Do you know what I mean? Ms. Davis, I can assure you that at my advanced age, I've been exposed to all sorts of multiculturalism, both negative and positive. Joanne is a much more conservative person than this young mother is. You can tell that by their hairstyles, if nothing else. Never once in my 30-some years here have I ever doubted the Christian premises of its foundation, nor the promise it offers for a more just and fair society. Yes, but Ms. Cole, do you have children? Well, you might not know it on your first read, but you do on your next read through. How triggering a question that's going to be for Joanne. Do you have children? Yeah, I had one baby 30 plus years ago, and they snatched it away from me and I never got it back. Him, her, them, back. So interpretation question. When Joanne says she has never in 30 years been given a reason to doubt the Christian premises of the foundation of the school or the promises it offers for a more just and fair society, is that the truth? Is that the truth as Joanne sees it? Or is that just what she feels like she has to say in order to be, I don't know, a loyal employee to the school? You tell me. I mean, I feel like I've been given enough evidence to doubt the Christian premises of its foundation and the promise it offers for a more just and fair society. I think Joanne has been treated super unfairly by the school and almost everybody in it. But is she really so much of a Pollyanna that she actually believes the words she's saying? And maybe we don't see enough inside her head, I think, to know for sure. So it's kind of guesswork. The embarrassing banjo party where the only person to show up is the fictional character, Chris Ware. If I could have talked to Chris Ware, the author, I would have told him to lighten up just a little bit. Does every single thing Joanne tries to do an outreach have to be slapped down quite this hard? Like, could she have just one social success? Could there be like a little bit more warmth on the part of some of her colleagues? Oh, well, he did what he did. Very embarrassing scene. And you can see the drops of sweat rolling down fictional Chris Ware's face as he contemplates all these empty chairs for the social event Joanne tried to have. And the crucifix is increasing his discomfort. And that leads into this other memory. Here's the boy with the white shirt, right? Same boy we saw before with the white shirt? I think yes. I think the white shirt is our cue. This is that boy, but a few years older. And this is a location. We don't know where exactly, but this is a place that he knows about and is leading Joanne to. Yeah, more casual racism on the bus. And another time that little sister Jane lets Joanne down by not writing a support letter for something that Joanne was applying to. When the situation was reversed, Joanne wrote the letter and her sister got the award. And when she's trying something, her sister doesn't write the letter and she doesn't get it. Well, this is the first time that we see Joanne's house from the outside, how it looks. And we can see it's a split level situation. And she lives in the downstairs part and her mom lives in the upstairs part. And we're going backward into the past again. In the present day of this moment in the narrative, she's shopping, but she's remembering when she was an older teenager, but still living at her mother's house. And what I believe about this scene, we're not told it in so many words, but I'm reading between the panels, as it were. Just after either her very first or one of her first sexual experiences. And she feels like what it feels like to be a young woman that has just had sex, and like experiencing the sexuality of her body and being aware of her breasts going into her blouse in a new way. The memory of herself standing there at the window and buttoning up her blouse or a dress and looking out the window, and this is probably him, right? The boy, the young man. And remembering, she doesn't remember exactly what her mother said to her in the kitchen or what she replied, but she remembers this moment. Joanna, what are you looking? And that's what that is. And meanwhile, like the hurt of her sister's betrayal lingers in her mind too. And she's muttering aloud again, don't you remember how I used to look after you, how I used to babysit you? The memory is so intense that she enters into it as though she is that girl still. This is the first time that we see a thought balloon coming from Joanne. It's been many, many pages of this chapter, and this is the very first time that that device is used. And the thought is as if it's coming from her younger self. But it isn't. This is, the now of this story. This is the 70s or possibly the early 80s, judging by the hairstyle. But she's remembering herself as a teenager. And when she had to mind her little sister, yes, that's what I'll say. I'll say, I've supported her for years, and you, and here, like a flood of memories of her life and Janine's life and how they've always been entwined. And she was always the responsible person and the protector. And Janine is always a creepy little tattletale, right? Telling on her sister, you didn't help me the one time I asked. Here's that boy. And where are they? Where is this happening? He's courting her in a relatively gallant way, kissing her hand. But little sister sees and little sister tells. See the pointing finger? And her remembering that so vividly that it's as though she still is that girl. And in a way we are, right? Aren't we? We contain our past selves still in ourselves. I can remember things that happened to me when I was 8 years old and still work up a tear over them now. I always kept your secrets. There's this blending of the present self and the past self in this voice. And here we see her swelling belly, right? It was going to come out sooner or later, right? You can't hide a pregnancy from your mother who you live with. But I have a hunch it was Janine who clued their mom in first. She might have tried to conceal it for quite some time. I always kept your secrets. Why don't you keep mine? In confrontation with the estranged sister, she comes home one day and boom, there the sister is, an intruder in her home. You can tell the emotional intensity by the way she's trembling. I'm going to move forward. I did want to point out just while we're here, once again, although Joanna's hairstyle has loosened up some from what it was in the beginning. This is a more contemporary hairstyle than what she used to have, or it's not the right word. It's a more this is a hairstyle that costs less trouble and expense and personal risk to maintain, because the ironing that you have to do to create that flat white lady type hairstyle that she had in the earliest scenes from the 1960s, that's not good for you to like iron your hair or to use chemicals on it. It's not healthy to do that. This is a like healthier hairstyle and a more ethnically proud hairstyle. And yet her sister has gone even more extreme than that in doing the hairstyle where basically you just shave it, you know? So this is again, more edgy and more prideful hairstyle than what Joanne has, even though Joanne's hairstyle is now more relaxed than it used to be. I'm going to suggest as an adventure option for students in my class, a book that centers around African-American women and hair altogether. It's by a woman named Ebony Flowers, and it's called Hot Comb. So anybody who finds the hair theme interesting here will be interested to read more in Hot Comb. Okay. Up until now, we've seen memories, but they didn't include thoughts and feelings except by implication, except by we can piece together what anybody in that situation would be feeling. But here for the first time, we do see Joanne thinking on this 2-page spread between 322 and 323. She's very young here. This is the early 1950s or maybe the late 1940s. Yeah, I'm going to say 40s. And she's walking with her mother. Her mother has white gloves on, right? Very refined. And Janine is a baby little enough to be pushed in a stroller. And her mom's going into the drugstore. She has to stay outside with the baby in the stroller. And while she's there, this Jewish man walks by and raises his hat to this girl in respect. Nice thing to do, to offer this gesture of courtesy to a girl on the sidewalk. So he's like really going out of his way to recognize this person, not just as a fellow human being, but like as a female person to whom you're giving this gendered sign of respect. Afternoon, young lady. And it's in great contrast to the way Joanne is treated by almost every other white character in the story, including some complete strangers who like go out of their way to call her a prostitute or spit on her from an upper window or whatever. But this is a contrast, and it really sticks with her. And she's trying to make sense out of this later, because she has been told, I suppose, that anybody who's not a Catholic or anybody who has not participated in being saved by being a follower of Jesus Christ is doomed to hell, right? And like, how is this possible? This is like a religious conundrum that this little girl is thinking about. Isn't this a good man? Isn't this like a super good man that goes out of his way to embody the principles of Christianity, right? So like, how is this going to work out in terms of the tenets of her religion? And she stays awake worrying about, the ultimate fate of that man's eternal soul, I think. All right. I'm going to hurry a little. Bill paying time for the mom. Mom's not super careful with her money, the way we know Joanne later will be. Instead of keeping all of her money in one place and knowing exactly how much she has the habit of tucking a little here and a little there. She's got to pay the bills, and she's looking in her coffee can. She's checking in her shoe. While she's out of the room, Joanne whips $2 out of her own bra and sticks it in the Bible where she knows her mom will look. So this is $2 from Joanne's own secret bra stash. and she's putting it into where she knows her mom will find it, and she's not even taking the credit for the full contribution that she's making to this household. And it's interesting that it's exactly $2, right? When I went to buy this book, when it was new, I went to the Texas Book Festival because Chris Ware was making an appearance there. And I had to wait a long time in the signing line for Chris Ware to sign my book. Well, here it is, his signature in the front. He gave me a special nice one. I edited a book about Chris Ware one time and worked with him on it, and he was happy that I gave it the amount of careful attention I did. So that's why it's a especially nice thank you. Anyway, while I was waiting in the book signing line to get my book signed, the guy who was behind me in line started talking to me about the book because we had both already read it. And he had a theory about this $2, which I am going to repeat to you guys. His theory was that she basically got paid that $2 by selling herself to neighborhood boys. Okay. And here's where he got that idea. Several pages along. Here. The boy with the white shirt. They are inside of that shed we saw him leading her to earlier. And they're making out in the car there. No, stop, no. Well, I have to go, wait a second, look, I'll give you a quarter. Okay, so we don't see how this scene ends, what happens next. And like another interpretive question, like, did she take the quarter to stay there and keep on kissing or whatever else they were doing in the car? Not going all the way, because they still got all their clothes on, but something, they're doing something in that car that she feels like she's not supposed to be doing. I don't know for sure, did she take the quarter on that occasion or did she not? But I feel reasonably confident that the source of the $2 in this other scene is not deliberate prostitution on her part. Like, no way. Come on, that's not the kind of thing Joanne would do. Here she's getting all trembly about the sinfulness of just whatever they're doing at this time in the car, kissing or maybe a little bit of touching or whatever, So I just don't think that she would, to that extent, violate the precepts of her church. Did she have sex with somebody? Yes, obviously, because it resulted in pregnancy. Well, and I think it was probably the same boy. That's what I think. I think all of her experience boils down to just a few times, or maybe even just one time with this one boy that she was very much attracted to. I do not think she was going around the neighborhood picking up guys and getting money from them. No, I do not. But your mileage may vary. And obviously this guy who was standing behind me in line thought otherwise than me. And I invite everybody to go through the story and like pick out evidence. Because it's not on the page. It's not on the page that she did take the quarter. It's not on the page that she didn't. I think there's a lot of other ways she could have got $2, including the fact that maybe her mom was paying her a salary for going with her on these house cleaning events. It's hard to know. But I think that she had earning power already as a teenager, and she could have been carefully saving her own money in her bra and then breaking into her stash to anonymously bail her mom out of this family emergency. Here's the scene where we learn that she is getting paid much less money than a white man who works the same job she does. Here she is doing her adoption registry research. She knows the name of the cleaning lady because of course she does. That's the kind of person she is. Here's another very early memory. She's so young here that it's before Janine is even in the picture. She has this great success at school. Joanna, that is one of the finest essays I've ever read in all my years of teaching. I want you to take that home and make sure your mother sees it, okay? The gold star, the reward for being good in school. We don't see Mrs. Crowley, but I'm going to make the guess that Mrs. Crowley is also African American and that Joanne is going to a segregated school because that's when this is. This is the 1940s, right? She gets home and there's a man there with her mom. I have a hunch that this is the biological father of little Janine. It's not completely impossible that he's also Joanne's own father, but I'm going to make the guess that not. But I don't know. It's not on the page. What we can see on the page is the way her mom is protectively folding her arms over her chest here. Her mom is embarrassed to be in this situation, to have her daughter come home and there she is with the man. And he's in a state of semi-undress, right? We can see his like garter thingies holding up his socks. This man is actually more welcoming to Joanne at that moment than her own mother is. I'm talking to someone right now. Go outside. It's her house. What do you got there, darling? Well, will you look at that? She got a star. She got the gold star. Her mom being ashamed. And here the exact birth records that she needs are the exact ones that's missing from 1961 to 1962. We will later learn that 1961 is the year, January 24th, 1961. That's when they took her baby from her. And here, she composed her own original music for the banjo. And she's tape recording herself playing it. I like this scene so very much because it shows to me the kind of resilience that Joanne has. No matter how many people in her life disrespect her, she respects herself. She respects herself as being the equal of any white person who owns a banjo and composes music for a banjo and plays it. She has purchased or rented or whatever the equipment to record herself playing, and you can tell by the equipment roughly the time period. This is the second or accompanying banjo part to Springtime Waltz. The confidence of her voice, as played by the composer Joanne Cole, December 16, 1975. Okay, 75. That she is a composer. You know, she has made herself into a qualified musician and composer, the right to call herself composer, just like Claude Rodin, who she admires. I gotta hurry up here. This is the moment when this guy betrays her. He doesn't even know it, how much he has betrayed her, but we do. She lingers under the stairs, overhears these people saying racist stuff, and she waits to see who is that who said that, and oh yeah, that guy, the one guy who I thought was on my side, and he was in a way, but not when he's alone with another white dude. He'll trash talk. And here's the part where the headmaster lets her know that they're going to give a special deal to the Lintz because of the Lintz patronage, financial patronage of the school. Anybody else would have been expelled by now, but Zachary is not going to be. So like, is Joanne like complicit in the corruption of this entire system because she goes along? And that we flash back in time from that scene of like, okay, we're going to give Zachary a pass, let Zachary slide, to this scene in the 1960s. It's we could do the math to figure out exactly which year it is, but we know it's the year that Jordan is in third grade, and she's meeting with the parents to let them know, oh, Jordan has improved so much, you know, he's going to be able to pass third grade. He's improved so much. And coincidence or not a coincidence, the Lent family are co-signers on the loan that Joanne gets to buy the house that she and her mother live in. And once again, the white male authority figure in this situation, just like Woody Cole in the previous scene, just like making a point of going out of his way to be extra ugly about the fact that he is dealing with an African-American person here. And he assumes, on the basis of no evidence whatsoever, that because you are an African-American, there's probably something shady about this whole thing, you know? If Miss Cole defaults on the loan, the Lents are going to pay for it, and they know that. But they've known her for a long time, and they trust her enough to be willing to put their names on the line to help her do this. If you or whomever you get to make your payments default, you realize how fortunate you are to be in this situation. Whomever you get to make your payments, what? What? Like, he's also assuming that, you know, she's some kind of, like, what, kept woman or has a pimp or whatever. Like, what is this? Whomever you get to make your payments. No, she's a grown woman in charge of her own finances with a steady job, not getting paid what she ought to be, but enough that she can afford to make her house payments anyway. But like, his assumption is, now I know what you people are like, you know. Yes, sir. And she's got to suck it up. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And be 100% respectful to this person who is being extremely disrespectful of her. I always make all of my payments ahead of schedule. Well, ain't that nice? Let's keep it that way. Just gratuitous, like rubbing her face in the fact that he has all this power and she has none. But then she does it to get the house, and then she has a house from then on. And like, how do we think of this situation? Like, should the Lents at this point step up and say, hey, you can't talk that way to her. You know, this is completely inappropriate. And they don't protect her from the humiliation part, but they are signing on the dotted line. You know, they are helping her to get her house. So there are degrees of guilt here, degrees of complicity in the racist structures. This guy is not only going along with it, but rubbing her nose in it. And the Lents are not being as protective and demonstrative as they could be if they were anti-racists, but they're the closest thing she has to friends and protectors in this situation. And they did do at least the minimum that was needful for her to make her economic life and her real estate transaction work out. Boy, this scene. Woody Brown getting drunk at a Christmas party. This is when? The 1980s or later? He's a little older, I think, than when we saw him in the Woody Brown chapter. And he gets drunk at their school Christmas party and says some stuff that lets us know that he has had this long-running fantasy in his own head about what she and George are getting up to at the library. We know that it has been 100% pure between her and George. The closest he ever came is that first day when he asked her if he could give her a ride home, and that day at the library where he put his hand on the back of her chair when he's showing her how to work the microfiche machine. That's it. They've never gone any closer than that. But Woody Brown, believing in this cultural notion of the hypersexual Black woman, assumes, or maybe because he found her desirable and finds her desirable, or did, you know. Revolting. And yet another confrontation with the horrors of history. This is not what she was using the library for, but she just ran across it while reading the newspaper. And Ware kind of tricks you and leads you in. I thought she was looking up stuff about musical performances, right? I saw the word Verdi. I'm like, okay, more musical performances, but no, it's not that at all. It's the account of a local lynching. What can you say? You know, her life has been bad. Her life has been very much subject to racial insults. But she was at least born in the post-lynching era, you know? And like, should she feel happy and grateful to be born when she was? Or does she have a right to feel aggrieved, you know? Because one generation is somewhat better off than previous generation? All right. We didn't talk a lot about Louise, and I won't talk about a lot now either, but she bumps into Louise at the grocery store. And we can see that Louise has made a biracial marriage and now has a biracial child. More evidence of times are changing, right? When we saw Louise before, when she was still in high school, she was saying none of these white boys would ever look at me. And now, surprise, ta-da, one did. Again, times change. The culture moves on. Things become more likely that were less likely before. But there's is Chris Ware pulling another fast one on us where we thought we had reliable or objective monstration going on? We saw in an earlier scene Louise being there on Cupcake Day and taking her cupcake. And now Louise tells us she wasn't there on Cupcake Day. So like two different memories of the same situation, they can't both be right. I would prefer to believe as a reader that it's Louise whose memory is faltering and that I can trust what I previously saw on the page, but I don't feel 100% sure. She's been at the school there so long that George has died. And that's when her daughter finally shows up. This is an incredibly powerful emotional scene, and Ware saves it for the end because it really packs a punch. Again, the emotion is shown by the trembling hands. I think maybe I might be your daughter. They're both trembling. Sorry. She mentions the date on one of these pages. (1961), right? The Blair Children's Home and Aid Society, January 24th. I'm so glad that Joanne finally had a lucky break, you know, this late in her life, that she and her daughter, that she lost so many decades ago. This woman must be 40 by now, right? At least. And then they find each other. And the book ends there. So like, we don't see anything more from that point, but, and of course, it doesn't make up for the fact that she's gone all of those years not knowing what happened to her daughter, or even that she had a daughter as opposed to like a son, right? Her mom never even told her that. And for whatever combination of pride or whatever, she doesn't keep on pushing her mother at a certain point for more information. Anyway, right here at the end of the book, this really good thing happens in Joanne Cole's life. And just one more thing, last thing I'm going to point out is this in the end papers of the book. We have seen, there are just like a couple of, you might call them almost Easter eggs, plopped down here on the back page. I think this bit at the top here is, this is the day her pregnancy has advanced to the point where it's showing, and she's been maybe trying to conceal it under her coat, but this is the day that her mom confronts her, possibly prompted by Janine. And she's wearing the same glasses she was wearing in that scene where she says, "I always kept your secrets. Why didn't you keep mine?" Right. And then this here, we have seen the Lintz in the Lintz section doing their grocery shopping in this car before. But here in this little back liminal space, Ware shows that she, Joanne Cole, and the Lintz do their grocery shopping at the same store. But what a difference in style, right? Here they are in their comfortable suburban vehicle, comfortably driving both directions to the grocery store. And here she is doing her grocery shopping on foot and pushing this little hand cart, and she'll have to go home on the bus. So just a nice little juxtaposition, how the other half lives, right? And the Lintz don't even see her or notice her or think about the difficulties that are not present in their life, but that are present in her life. Screams white privilege, right? Screams the economic privilege of being in the comfortable classes. I will stop the tape here.